Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about common barriers experienced by people with disabilities.
Nearly everyone faces hardships, difficulties at one time or another, but for people with disabilities, these barriers can be more frequent and have a longer lasting consequence. The World Health Organization describes barriers as being more than just physical obstacles. Here are the WHO definition of barriers. Factors in person's environment that, through their absence or presence, limit function and create disability. These include aspects such as the physical environment, a lack of relevant assistance, negative attitudes towards people with disabilities, and lack of services, systems, or policies that either are non existent or that hinder the involvement or participation of all people with health conditions in all areas of their life.
I'm Sherri, and this is Roberta. I'm a mother of a child with a son with Down syndrome, and Roberta's a special education teacher. And we are just sharing educational information so people can better understand the disabilities community. And I will also put a link to this article in the description, so don't worry about catching everything. You'll be able to read the article yourself. Other things that the World Health Organization describes as other barriers, multiple barriers for people to participate with disabilities is the first one's attitudinal.
And this includes stereotyping and a stigma, prejudice, or discrimination within society that prevents people with disabilities from feeling welcome or included.
And I know firsthand raising a son, I mean, you know, life has changed a lot for people with disabilities, but I still see a lot of those challenges that my son faces, you know.
Absolutely. You kind of want to say, Down syndrome isn't contagious. Don't worry.
He still has feelings. He still wants to be included and loved and be a part of everything just like everyone else.
And really, it's not contagious. Don't worry.
It really isn't.
Right.
The next one is communications is another barrier, which my son is hard of hearing, so communications can be quite a barrier, and his first language is American Sign Language. And you know, one opposition I faced was even some people in my family didn't want me to teach him sign language. They just wanted him to talk. But, you know, some people with Down syndrome, some kids can talk very well, other kids can't, and you really don't know what that ability is going to be.
Right, and dorky, interesting fact, learning sign language as an infant, even a typically developing infant, supports later language acquisition. So, teaching your baby to sign is always a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I was told that by one of Nathan's doctors, Dr. Puchel, actually, God rest his soul. He passed away a few years ago. Wonderful man. He also raised a son with Down syndrome. But that was one thing he shared with me when Nathan was really young. Kids with Down syndrome who learn sign language typically will have better language skills later on because the language barrier of the brain is being used, or that area of the brain's being used, so their language is being developed even if they physically can't talk very well.
Exactly. So another communication barrier is the use of complicated language. Sometimes you'll find yourself in a situation, I don't know, this happens to me a lot at the bank, where people are explaining things to me that are way outside my realm of knowledge, and I have to say, yeah, can you slow down? People with disabilities don't always have the confidence or the skills to tell somebody that they're going too fast or that they're speaking in complicated language.
Yeah, and to add to that, like my son understands what people are saying, but he doesn't always have the words to communicate back in English to respond, and he'll just go to words or things that he's familiar with or can say, well, like, I want to go home, and it has no context in the conversation, and people just think he doesn't understand what you're talking about, and that's the furthest from the truth. He just doesn't have those words, and he knows you're not going to understand his language. That's where, you know, sign interpreters become very important, and I'm learning sign, but I'm not an interpreter, and I'm learning it myself. So it's very hard for me sometimes, depending on the topic, to, go be that go-between.
Right.
Depending on the topic. If we're at the zoo, I'm good.
That's awesome. And there we go. We
You
already
want to go
said
to the next
I was going
barrier?
to say, but also this includes videos that are not closed captioned.
Yes, yep, absolutely. That's very important for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, is the closed captioning. That's
Right. It makes things far more accessible to them.
absolutely. The next barrier is physical, where if, when my son was younger, he had very low muscle tone, so he would go down on his hands and knees to get down the stairs or whatever. So going to different places could be kind of dangerous. As a young child, that's easy. I can scoop him up. But as he gets older, like he loves to go to concerts, and we will leave in the middle of the last song to make sure we can get down all the staircases, even though he walks well. But if somebody bumps into him, he does not have that muscle tone to catch his balance and not fall. So we will leave in the middle of the last song so we can get out of a place safely for him.
Right, and a lot of times, though that is a physical disability, it's not a qualifying condition to get you preferred seating or a handicap placard. But there's also, they use an example in the CDC article of mammography equipment that requires a woman to stand who might have a mobility issue. That's insane to me, because now you're excluding people from often life-saving health screenings.
Absolutely.
So it's just something to advocate for. Physical barriers, it's something that's more familiar to me working in education, because we always have to be mindful of, are there steps? Can everybody make it to this room or in and out of this door? So we're always very, very mindful of that, but not every setting is.
Right, that's one thing when your kids are young and IEPs are being made. Educators look at if the kid can navigate the school on their own, and if they can't, then they have to make.
Do they need to be taught to go up and down stairs safely? Do they need to be monitored in the bathrooms for safety and accessibility?
But even for an adult member in your family, where you have a potty or a family function, having it in a place that a family member who has disabilities, it makes it easier for them to.
Absolutely.
That's accessible.
The width of the doorway to your bathroom might be too narrow to accommodate a wheelchair, so you might have to have another setup.
Right, or have the party at a location where you can, so you can include somebody in your family who has a disability who would like to be a part of a family function.
Absolutely. So important just to be inclusive minded, and it's not difficult. You don't have to memorize this article or be some kind of policy wonk, which leads us to policy barriers.
Yeah.
Policy barriers are frequently related to a lack of awareness or enforcement of existing laws and regulations. There are so many requirements out there for door widths and inclined planes and access to stairs and elevators, but they're not uniformly enforced or inspected. So many times I've gone to places and I've noticed, and it kind of sticks out to me like a glaring red light, is the handicap stall is being used, or it's broken and not been repaired. The handicap access to get in is blocked. These things, it doesn't. There aren't enough funds to keep these laws and requirements in force. So if you see something like a blocked handicap exit or a broken handicap toilet, please alert your local municipality, or maybe the establishment isn't aware of the rules. You might want to remind them that this is now not an inclusive setting for people.
Right. The next one is social, which is so important, having an atmosphere where people with disabilities feel welcome and a part of everything.
All right, and social barriers are related to conditions in which people are born, grow, live, work, and age. social determinants of health. Without social connections, people can become depressed, feel a lack of connection, and that can affect their physical health as well. So this really speaks to the importance of inclusion for all.
Kind of like how we've all been struggling through COVID. That's a norm within the disability community. If you think about what you're going through and not seeing your friends, not being included in things, that's a struggle daily for people with disabilities without the pandemic.
Right, absolutely.
And it's made it even worse for people in that demographics. And our last one is transportation. Accessing buses, elevators, taxis.
Having somebody to interpret the bus schedule for you.
Yeah.
Bus schedules can be tricky and difficult to read. I know for myself, not having taken the bus in a long time.
I don't think I've ever taken the bus.
Since I moved out to the burbs, I stopped using public transportation. So now reading a schedule for me can be really tricky. Now imagine I have a reading disability or a cognitive impairment. I'm going to need somebody to help me figure out that schedule. This is something that's not easily accessed for people.
Right. Or if there's a mishap in the schedule, that person would need to be taught how to navigate that.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
Exactly.
and that pretty much wraps up a lot of the barriers to people with disabilities. So we're doing these educational videos to make people more mindful of these things. And people with disabilities are more like us than they are different.
Absolutely.
And they want to be included with everything just like we all do. And they have feelings. Don't be afraid to
And don't be afraid to speak up.
Yeah.
When you see something that's not inclusive, don't be afraid to question it or say something to the people in charge. If you go into an establishment, you might want to drop the owner an email or talk to them face to face and say, hey, I just noticed that your establishment is not inclusive. And it could just be that they don't understand or don't know how to make it more inclusive. You can direct them to this information, or maybe, be a pal and explain that to them. Because again, we are more connected than we think.
Absolutely.
And people with disabilities are valuable members of our community, and you're going to be so glad to have them with you.
Yes, my son is just a wonderful, delightful, and I can't imagine my life without him, and I'm so glad he is in my life. And thank you guys for watching, and please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell notification. And again, I will put a link to this article in the description. So please like, share, and subscribe if you like our content and want more videos like this, or if you have any suggestions of what topics on disabilities you would like covered, and
Absolutely.
Roberta and I will
We'll
do
research it and break it down for you.
Yep.
Until next time.
Bye, guys.